Hi guys, Sandy from the Paddle School here. In this video today, we're going to talk about the topspin versus the flat forehand at the back of the court. Now this is something we see a lot of tennis players coming in and trying to hit loads of topspin. So we're going to look at when is a good time to use that topspin, when it's better to hit flat, and also the technique if you did want to put a little bit of topspin on the ball, what you should be trying to do. And at the end of the video, we've also got a bonus tip on when it's a good time to close that racket face, but it's not actually topspin on a specific type of shot. So before we start with the technique of this topspin and the flat, we actually want to look at the type of ball that we could use this shot on. There are some balls that we would never use a topspin on. For example, if the ball is a high ball and it bounces up here, we're not going to try and hit topspin on that ball. More than likely, if it's above chest height, we're going to try and hit slice on that ball or a little bit flat. Yeah. The other time we were unlikely to use topspin is if we're in a really difficult position and we're at the back of the court and we're forced back here, we're not going to try and kind of hit topspin on that ball. And the other occasion is when that ball bounces off that back glass. If the ball is moving forward, it's actually difficult to get brush on that ball because it's going away from you. So the times that we would use topspin potentially are the balls that are in front of you, when it's a slightly easier ball, a slightly lower ball, and from this height you can actually get the spin and the effect that you're looking for. So first we'll talk about the flat shot, because this is a shot you would hit the majority of the time, and I've actually done a video on the reasons to learn hitting flat from the back of the court, which I'll link up here and also down in the description. But if you hit flat, you firstly get good disguise on that ball. So when you take that racket back, you come into this position and you can actually either hit fast and flat through the ball as if you're going to hit to body or down the middle. You can also slow the racket head down and hit a chiquita down to the feet, or you can come underneath that ball at the last minute and hit a lob, and therefore it can often be difficult for your opponent to see what's going to happen. If you come back in the topspin, really it's kind of obvious what you're going to be hitting on that next shot. Now I'm curious, let me know down in the comments if you've actually learned to hit flat on that ball, because most of the time I watch the tournaments I see everyone either hitting slice or trying to hit topspin. So I'd be interested to know from you guys if you actually use that flat at the moment in your game. So the times when you might use a little bit of topspin on that ball is basically when you want to hit the ball a little bit faster, but you also want it to dip down to the feet of the opponents. Now that's usually the case if you want to play that cross court particularly, because often if you hit topspin down that line, it can, if you hit a little bit too hard, bounce off that back glass. So often it's when you see that your opponent at net is slightly further back and you might just want to kind of brush over that ball just to try and get it to dip down to the feet on the other side of the net. So when it comes to the technique for the topspin, you have to actually understand why you're using the topspin in the paddle court. It's not the same as tennis. In tennis, you use lots of racket head speed, you have a nice big loop on that ball, you try and get loads of brush so that firstly you can hit a lot of power and it will dip down, but also because you want it to kick up at the other end. Whereas in paddle, you don't want it to kick up at the other end. If it kicks up and bounces and comes off the glass, it will come up for your opponents, which is actually easier. So the only time that you would use the topspin in paddle is to try and get actually dip down over the other side of the net. So in that case, we don't need to generate loads of rotation and loads of speed in our backswing. So from your position here, you take the racket back like you would do normally, and all that happens is you just kind of close your wrist ever so slightly to come over that ball at the last minute, just to try and get a little bit of spin on that ball. Like I said, you're not trying to get loads of rotation and loads of leg drive through that ball. A common discussion I have with a lot of tennis players is that they come to the paddle court, they say they've got great topspin in tennis, and they start using it on the paddle court. And at the beginning, they say it really works well, so they want to keep using it. But the problem is it's probably working well because your opponents are also new to paddle and they haven't understood how to deal with the walls. As soon as you play an experienced paddle player, they will allow that ball to bounce off the glass and then attack you straight back. And normally, if it's a lot of topspin, they'll be further up in the court and it will give them the net position. Me personally, I love playing against players that hit a lot of topspin because I know I can just wait for it after the glass and then attack them straight back. So my advice advice would be, if you're coming from tennis and you want to hit topspin, first learn to hit flat. Like, completely remove topspin from your game so that you can actually learn these flat shots, and then you can always bring a little bit of topspin into your game a bit later on, because if you get into the habit of using topspin at the beginning, it can be a difficult habit to break. So my recommendation would be to try and cut topspin out completely if you've used it a lot in tennis and you want to use it a lot in paddle. Only add it to your game once you've got comfortable with the flat. For the bonus tip, we're actually going to talk about a specific type of shot, and this is when you hit the lob and they're going to hit a bandeja down to this side fence, and you can actually run in, and instead of hitting like loads of topspin on this ball, all you're going to do is just kind of close that racket face. You're still going to hit quite flat, but you're going to try and angle this down towards the fence or towards the side glass before they've got time to recover that net position. That can often be a good way of you and your partner quickly taking the net. Now, this is something you can do on the backhand side, on the left-hand side of the court as well, and on that side, more often than not, they will be hitting topspin into that fence if it's a right-hander, so that's another time that you can kind of get over that ball and just try and close that racket face. Now, I can't emphasize enough the importance of learning to hit flat when you're learning the game. So on this side, I'm going to put a video learning to play flat at the back of the court, and here it's really important to get this before you consider adding any topspin into your game.